It was just after 7 in the morning when Alice stepped outside her small flat on Birchwood Street. The sky was still painted in the soft grays of early dawn, and the chill in the air hinted that spring hadn't fully arrived yet. Wrapped in her blue raincoat, she sipped from her travel mug and gave a short whistle. That's when the door behind her creaked open again and Benny came trotting out. Benny was a golden retriever with soft, honey-colored fur and kind eyes that always looked like they were smiling. He wasn't just a pet. He was her routine, her comfort, her best friend. Ever since the breakup last winter, he'd been her only real company. "You ready?" she asked, looking down at him with a grin. Benny wagged his tail once and gave a soft bark in reply. Together, they walked the 3 blocks to the bus stop. Alice talked to him along the way like he was just another commuter. She told him about the meetings she had that day, how her boss still forgot to call her by the right name, how she was considering quitting altogether and opening a dog cafe. Benny listened, just as he always did. Head slightly tilted, eyes focused, tail gently swaying with every step. At the corner of Mason and Elm, the number 46 bus pulled up with a sigh of brakes. Alice took one last sip from her mug, patted Benny on the head, and told him to go home. But this time, Benny didn't turn back. As the doors folded open, Benny hopped up the step like he'd done it 100 times before. He walked down the narrow aisle and sat in the empty seat beside her. Alice blinked. "Benny, what are you doing?" The driver, a gray-haired man named Ron who'd seen just about everything over 20 years of driving, looked into the rear view and chuckled. "Well, I'll be," he said. "Looks like he's your shadow today." "I'm so sorry," she told him. "I don't know why he." "Don't worry about it, love," said Ron. "Long as he behaves, he's fine by me. Everyone could use a travel buddy." Benny stayed quiet the whole ride, sat like a gentleman. When the bus turned a corner too quickly, he braced himself with his paws. When a toddler across the aisle pointed at him and giggled, Benny gave a slow tail wag but stayed in his seat. The moment Alice stood up to get off, Benny followed. At her office door, she gave him another look. "You've got to go home, Ben. I can't bring dogs into the office." As if he understood, Benny turned around and trotted back to the bus stop. She watched him go with a puzzled frown, then hurried up the stairs to clock in. That afternoon, when she returned to the stop, she found Benny already there, sitting upright, tongue out, tail thumping the pavement. "How did you?" The driver leaned out the window of the idling bus and called. He got back on around noon, rode to the same stop and waited. Smart boy, that one. The next day, the same thing happened. And the next. And the next. By Friday, Benny had become a regular on Route 46. Passengers greeted him like an old friend. Someone brought him biscuits in a little paper bag. A college student made a TikTok that went viral. Benny the commuter dog. Alice tried to stop him at first. Left the gate closed. Took side streets to avoid the usual route. But Benny always found a way. Sometimes she'd see him trotting 2 steps behind her like a well-dressed little gentleman with nowhere better to be. It became their thing. Alice would ride to work. Benny would hop off just before the office. He'd sniff around the bakery on the corner, nap in the sun, and then ride home around lunch. If Alice was late, he waited at the stop. Rain or shine. The bus driver, Ron, started keeping a water bowl behind his seat. Someone else knitted Benny a scarf with a tiny patch that read "Official Bus Buddy." Alice couldn't believe it. Her goofy, clingy, sofa-stealing dog had become a symbol of loyalty in the whole neighborhood. One morning, a little girl asked her, "Does your dog miss you while you work?" Alice paused, then smiled softly. "Yeah," she said. "I think he misses me a lot." But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Benny wasn't just following her. He was holding on. To their routine. To their connection. To the comfort of knowing that as long as he got on that bus, he'd find her again. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this simple act would soon mean something far greater. And the bus seat Benny chose every day? It wouldn't stay empty for long. Not yet. But soon, by the second week, Benny had a routine sharper than most office workers. He woke up early, stretched in the hallway, and sat by the front door, waiting for Alice to grab her coat. When she opened the door, he walked ahead of her, tail high, ears perked. Down Birchwood Street, past the flower shop, left at the bakery. Every step memorized. But now, when the bus pulled up to the stop, Benny no longer waited for permission. He boarded like he belonged there. "Morning, Benny," the driver said as the golden retriever trotted up the steps. Passengers smiled. Some waved. A man in a business suit scooted over to let Benny sit beside him. A teenager near the back pulled out his phone. "There he is again. Yo, this dog rides this bus every day. Same time. Swear to God." The video went up on TikTok that night. By morning, Benny was viral. 300,000 views. Comments pouring in from all over the UK and the US. "That's the most British dog I've ever seen. This is the kind of commuter I want sitting next to me. If this dog doesn't get his own seat and a cup of tea, I'm rioting." By Wednesday, a local reporter showed up to ride Route 46. She sat quietly with her notepad, watching as Benny climbed aboard, settled in his usual spot, and looked out the window like he had somewhere important to be. The article ran the next day. "Benny the commuter dog steals Bristol's heart." Alice couldn't believe it. She'd gotten tagged in dozens of posts and videos. Co-workers teased her. "So your dog's famous now?" said her manager, glancing at the article. "Think he's available for interviews?" Alice smiled, but her heart was tight. She hadn't meant for any of this to happen. It was funny, sweet, even magical. But it also worried her. Benny wasn't just going for a ride. He was waiting for her. Every single day. That Friday, she left the office an hour early and waited at the stop. Benny wasn't there. For the first time in weeks, he hadn't come to meet her. Her stomach dropped. She looked down the street, scanned the bakery, even peeked around the flower stand. Nothing. She was just about to call home when the bus pulled up and the doors swung open. There he was. Benny sat proudly in the front row, a child's sun hat tied around his neck like a bandana. Someone had drawn little sunglasses on it with a marker. He barked once when he saw her, jumped off the seat, and rushed into her arms. The whole bus cheered. "I didn't know he belonged to anyone," said a woman holding a shopping bag. "I thought he was just ours." Alice hugged him tighter. "He's mine. He's always been mine." But as they walked home, she noticed something. Benny didn't look up at her like he usually did. He didn't wag quite as much. He just walked beside her, quiet and steady. Something had changed. That night, as she sat on the sofa, scrolling through comments and clips of Benny's daily rides, she saw one that made her pause. It was from a man in New York. He wrote, "My dad died last year. His dog waited by the door for weeks. This hit me hard. Dogs know. They always know." Alice stared at the words. She looked over at Benny, asleep with his head resting on her trainers. She didn't know what he was thinking. But she felt it. Somehow, Benny was holding on to more than routine. He was holding on to her. And deep inside her chest, she felt a flicker of fear. She didn't know that in just a few days, that flicker would become something far more real. Because the day Benny rode the bus alone wasn't a fluke. It was the beginning of something no one saw coming. It was a cold Tuesday morning in early March. The sky was heavy with clouds. The kind that threatened rain but never delivered. Just gray silence and a damp chill that made your bones ache. Alice didn't come downstairs that morning. Benny sat by the door, tail thumping once, twice. He tilted his head toward the stairs, listening. No footsteps. No keys jangling. No soft voice saying, "Come on, Ben, let's go." He waited. At 7:32 a.m., he scratched once at the front door. At 7:38, he pawed again. When no one came, he paced the hall. Then, at 7:45 sharp, he pushed the door open with his nose. It hadn't been latched all the way. And just like that, Benny stepped out into the street alone. At the stop on Mason and Elm, the usual crowd had gathered. Most people didn't notice at first. The bus pulled up, the door hissed open, and a few heads turned as the golden retriever climbed aboard by himself. Ron, the driver, blinked. "Where's your lady, then?" Benny didn't answer. He took his usual seat. Ron waited a few extra seconds, glanced at the empty pavement, then closed the doors. That morning, Benny rode all the way to the usual stop near Alice's office. He got off, walked to the glass doors. She wasn't there. He waited. People passed by. Some gave him a pat. Others took pictures, thinking it was just another cute dog moment. But Benny didn't move. He just sat, watching. Inside the office, her desk sat empty. Her chair still turned slightly to the side. No one knew yet. At 1:10 p.m., Benny returned to the stop. When the next number 46 bus arrived, he got back on, rode home. Still no Alice. At sunset, he curled up on the front mat, nose pressed to the door. He didn't eat his dinner. The next day, the same thing happened. Benny woke up, walked to the stop, rode alone. Ron looked for Alice, asked around. That evening, the woman from the bakery approached the bus as Benny climbed off. "He's been coming alone?" she asked. "Yeah," said Ron. "3 days now. I thought she might have been sick." The woman frowned. She hadn't seen Alice either. Back at the office, her supervisor left a voicemail. Then another. No answer. That night, Alice's phone lit up on her kitchen counter. Unread messages. Missed calls. And Benny? Benny lay by the front door, eyes fixed on the handle, as if it might turn any second. He didn't sleep. He was waiting. The next morning, a nurse at the city hospital entered room 407. Alice lay in the bed, pale and still, machines humming softly beside her. Car accident, they had said. Hit by a van on her way to work. No ID on her. No phone. No emergency contact. The doctors called it stable but serious. She had been unconscious for 3 days. In the bus seat across town, Benny rested his head against the window. The stop approached. He looked. She wasn't there. He closed his eyes. And the ride continued. By Thursday, regulars on Route 46 had noticed something was wrong. Benny still rode the same seat. Still looked out the same window. Still got off at the same stop. But his eyes weren't curious anymore. They were searching. Ron, the driver, had stopped asking where Alice was. He just gave Benny a quiet nod in the morning and kept his hand near the radio, wondering if someone should call it in. A woman named Claire had started riding the 46 bus the previous week. She worked in HR at the council offices and sat 2 rows behind Benny. At first, she thought it was adorable. A dog taking the bus like clockwork. But something about it didn't sit right now. The way he checked every face at the stop. The way his ears lifted whenever a woman in a blue coat walked by. The way his tail never wagged anymore. On Friday morning, Claire did something different. She followed him. When Benny got off near the bakery, she did too. When he trotted toward the glass office doors and sat down to wait, Claire stayed a few steps behind, pretending to check her phone. She watched as he lay down slowly, chin on paws, eyes fixed on the front door. He didn't move for 20 minutes. Claire finally approached the receptionist inside. "Excuse me. Do you know the woman this dog belongs to?" The receptionist blinked, looked past her at Benny. "Oh, that's Alice's dog, right? She hasn't been in for a few days. HR said she was out sick or something." Claire frowned. "No one's seen her?" "Not that I know of." Claire walked back outside and crouched next to Benny. He didn't shy away. He just looked at her, tired and loyal and full of questions. Claire whispered softly, "Where is she, boy?" That evening, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She posted in a local Facebook group with a photo. "This dog rides bus 46 every day and waits outside an office near the high street. His owner hasn't shown up in days. Does anyone know her?" The post exploded overnight. By Saturday morning, Dozens of people had commented. One person recognized Alice. Another said she lived off Birchwood Street. Someone else mentioned hearing about a woman hit by a van a few days ago, no ID on her. Claire's heart sank. She called every hospital in town. Finally, a nurse at Bristol General confirmed. Yes. Room 407. Female, early 30s. Still unconscious. No contact information found yet. Claire stared at the phone. Then she looked at Benny, curled up under the bench at the bus stop, waiting like he always did. She made a decision. She would take him. She knelt down beside him. Come on, boy. Let's go see her. And for the first time in nearly a week, Benny stood up without hesitation. As if he already knew. Claire didn't know if the hospital would even allow it. But when she looked at Benny, sitting calmly in the back seat of her car, staring out the window as if he knew exactly where they were going, she decided to try anyway. At Bristol General, she walked through the front doors with Benny close at her side. The security guard stood up. Ma'am, you can't bring a dog in here. He's not just a dog, she said gently. He's family. She explained. The accident. The missing woman. The dog who rode the bus for a week, waiting. The nurse at reception was the same one Claire had spoken to on the phone. Her eyes softened when she saw Benny. Give me a minute. 10 minutes later, Claire and Benny were being escorted to the lift. Room 407. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that hospitals carry like a scent. Sterile, slow, full of waiting. Claire stepped aside as the nurse opened the door. Alice lay in bed, pale and still, hooked to machines. Her hand rested gently on the blanket. Her breathing was slow but steady. The moment Benny saw her, he froze. Then he stepped forward. He didn't bark. Didn't whine. Just walked up to the bed and placed his head gently on her chest. The machines beeped steadily. Claire wiped her eyes. The nurse watched silently. Then something happened. Alice's fingers moved. Just a twitch. Barely noticeable. Benny nuzzled closer, his tail thumping once. Alice's eyes fluttered. The nurse gasped. Doctor? We need a doctor. Moments later, a team rushed in. Monitors lit up. Voices filled the room. And in the middle of it all, Benny didn't move. He stayed right there, head on Alice's chest, as if he'd finally reached the end of a long, lonely journey. As if this was all he'd been waiting for. Outside the room, Claire stood shaking, smiling through tears. She had followed a dog onto a bus. And somehow, that dog had brought someone back. Alice's eyelids were heavy. The world was soft, distant. She heard beeping. Soft voices. A hum of machines. And then something warm. A weight on her chest. Familiar. Comforting. She opened her eyes. The ceiling came into view first. Then the soft hospital lights. And then, Benny. His eyes were locked on hers, wide and golden. He didn't bark. He didn't move. Just looked at her, breathing in time with her own heartbeat. Her lips parted. Benny? He licked her hand. Tears filled her eyes instantly. You found me. The nurse stepped back, stunned. She's awake. A doctor rushed in. Questions followed. Lights in her eyes. Blood pressure. Words like remarkable and response spike. But Alice only saw Benny. She ran her fingers slowly over his ears, feeling his soft fur beneath her trembling hands. How did he get here? Claire stepped in from the hallway. He rode the bus. Alice blinked. What? Claire smiled, tears in her eyes too. He's been riding the number 46 every day. To your office. Waiting at the stop. Alone. Alice couldn't speak. Claire continued. He wouldn't stop. Someone filmed him. Then people started talking. I followed him. And when I found out what happened, I brought him here. Alice turned back to Benny. You clever boy. Her voice broke. You waited for me. Benny let out a soft, quiet whine and laid his head back on her lap. The doctor adjusted her fore and smiled gently. Whatever you've been through, You've got someone who never gave up on you. Later that night, as Alice drifted in and out of sleep, the nurse brought a blanket and a pillow for Claire, who'd offered to stay with Benny. But Benny didn't leave Alice's side. Not once. And for the first time in days, he finally rested. Because he knew she was safe. And tomorrow, when the sun came up and buses rolled through the city again, he wouldn't have to ride alone. By Sunday morning, Benny's story had already begun to travel. The video Claire had posted of the golden retriever riding the number 46 alone had been shared over 2 million times. It wasn't just Bristol anymore. It was London, Manchester, New York, Los Angeles. Loyal dog rides bus alone after owner's accident. Golden retriever refuses to stop waiting until she wakes. News vans parked outside the hospital. Reporters called the front desk. Animal welfare groups offered donations. But inside room 407, Alice still had no idea how far the story had gone. She was sitting up now. Her cheeks were pink again. The doctors said she'd make a full recovery, though it would take time. Claire came in with her phone in hand. You might want to see this. She showed her a video clip. It started with Benny boarding the bus. Then it cut to him sitting quietly by the window, waiting at the stop, getting off, sitting by her office door. And then the reunion at the hospital. Benny's head on her chest, her hand finding his fur. Alice stared at the screen, silent. Tears welled up in her eyes. This was us. Claire nodded. People love him, Alice. They love you. They're calling him the most loyal dog in Britain. Alice laughed through her tears. He's always been like this. Since the day I rescued him. I just never thought he'd rescue me too. The hospital allowed Benny to stay, just for a few more days. A special exception, they said. Staff came in to see him. Kids from the pediatric ward left drawings outside her door. One nurse printed a sign that read, Room 407, home of Benny the bus dog. When Alice finally stood up with help, Benny was right beside her. You ready to go home? He wagged his tail. Reporters waited outside, but Claire helped them slip through the back entrance quietly. No flashes. No microphones. Just fresh air and quiet streets. Benny hopped into the car like he'd done it 1,000 times before. As they pulled away from the hospital, Alice looked at him and whispered, I heard you came for me. Even when I couldn't hear you. Even when I didn't know. Benny leaned his head on her shoulder. And in that moment, she didn't need cameras or headlines to know. Some love doesn't need words. It just rides the same route. Every day. Until it finds its way. A month later, spring returned to Bristol. The days were longer, softer. Trees bloomed with quiet confidence, and the city's buses rolled through familiar routes under warmer skies. But something had changed on bus 46. People still talked about him. The seat by the third window on the left? That was Benny's seat. Ron, the driver, kept a small photo of him taped to the dashboard. Benny with his paws up on the fare box, ears perked, eyes focused forward. The sign above it read, In honor of a very good boy, Benny the bus dog. Alice was walking again. Slowly at first, then stronger. She no longer needed the cane Claire had lent her. But every time she passed a bus stop, her chest caught just a little. Remembering the quiet loyalty of the one who never missed a morning. She and Benny had moved to a quiet house on the edge of town. Close to the park, far from traffic. He seemed calmer now, like he could finally rest. And yet on rainy mornings, when the wind howled just right, Alice sometimes found him sitting by the door, looking out. Not sad. Not lost. Just remembering. Sometimes she'd smile and open it. All right then, she'd say. Just for a ride. And they'd head down the hill together. To the bakery. To the old office. Past the stop where it all began. People would wave. Some would tear up. Others would crouch down to pet him, as if touching something sacred. And Benny, as always, was gentle. Steady. Like he knew what they needed. Claire still visited. She'd bring biscuits and talk about the day she followed a dog onto a bus and ended up changing a life. Not just Alice's. Her own too. Because some stories don't end when the ride is over. Some keep going. In every quiet loyalty. In every morning someone waits. In every seat saved by a window, just in case. Because sometimes, love isn't loud. Sometimes, it just rides the same route. Over and over. Until it's needed again. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through this wonderful tale. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves mystical tales. And don't forget to subscribe to The Real Furry Stories for more unforgettable stories of love, loss, and the bonds that never die. Until next time, may your lanterns always stay lit. Hearty goodbye.